So let's look at tape measures today. This is obviously a huge tool in any art handler, preparator's arsenal. We use a lot of different types of tape measures at the museum. If I'm handling fine art objects, if I'm measuring something that is a delicate surface, you'll see people in my position and registrars, people who work in conservation of artworks will use fabric tape measures because they're more gentle. You don't have to worry about the abrasive metal of the end of a tape measure or the actual metal ribbon that you get with a standard tape measure. So we use those a lot. If you're choosing your own tape measure that you want to have as your go-to at home, you should think about what your needs are. I have a lot of different ones that I would use for different projects, and I don't have one that I'm particularly loyal to, although there's some that are like old friends. So one of the things that I use a lot, because I install artwork, and part of the formula, if you remember, of hanging at eye level, is taking the height of a piece and dividing it in half. And so sometimes that math can get really tricky if you're trying to work quickly. So I like to use a self-centering tape measure because it does the math for me. So here on the tape measure ribbon, if I'm measuring something that is, say, 30 3/4 high, and I need to think right away, well, what's half of that? That 3/4 might mess me up for a second. I would see that it's 15 3/8, and it tells me right there. So at that measurement of 30 3/4, it shows me in red below that 15 3/8, and it just saves a lot of time. Also, if you're looking for something that's more versatile, I really recommend getting a metric tape measure because you can get standard units and metric units on it at the same time. At the museum, we work with a lot of international artists, and it's good to think both ways and to be open to working in metric and the larger world. So I definitely recommend having one of those handy, especially if it could be useful for you to save time on converting those measurements. And it's really good to make your brain think that way as well from what it's used to. So some of the ones that, if you're working in a large space, if you're doing like a renovation or something like that, it saves you a lot of time to have a bulkier tape measure, because something like this, you'll be able to measure long distances. You'll be able to let this extend up a wall and stay rigid because this one is so wide. So things like that in construction, when you're framing out something, it saves you trips up a ladder that you don't need to make, and it saves you from maybe doing something more dangerous to reach like a higher place. So I definitely recommend that. But really, any standard tape measure will probably serve you well. It's really great to have one that you are comfortable with reading, because it saves you a lot of time looking at the right measurements. So if you're really comfortable with even the font, the numbers, the spacing, how certain distances are highlighted, it really saves you a lot of time because it can be easy to mix those numbers up in your mind. So the saying is always measure twice, cut once. And I'm more of a fan of measure 5 times, cut once.